إذا حذر أحدكم الموت إن ترك خيرا الوصية الوالدين والأقربين بالمعروف حقا على المتقين. These are verses from the Quran, chapter 2, verse 1 and 8. And the address is the same way. You see the words used here, like more or less how the verses of fasting is introduced. So you can see how important this issue here is. It's kutiba alaykum as-siyam. Here is kutiba alaykum. Then it talks is a hazara ahadil maut. It is prescribed upon you that when your death approaches you, number one, and if you have any goods or wealth, then you make a wasiyah. For whom? For your parents and for your relatives. And this is the duty upon those who consider themselves to be pious. So making a will is one of those very, very important duty for a believer. It is not wajib in the same way as fasting is wajib. So the words are the same, kutiba. However, so it is not wajib to have to write your will, but it is very, very important, especially in the environments in which we live today. It almost becomes wajib. Why? Because of the fact that if somebody dies and if he does not have a will to say how his assets are going to be distributed to his inheritors, there is a big time problem. Because there will be a lot in the family who will all put their claims on those assets. Not only will they put claims on those assets, there will be problem in the distribution, in the way it is to be distributed. And ultimately, 99.9%, it will end up in the courts. Because if there is no will, then ultimately the court will appoint an executor. And that is another hell. Because it is going to cost a lot of money. The court, the way they work, they take their own good time. And they are charging on the estate. So ultimately, a lot of wealth is lost in the way of legal fees. And when the distribution takes place, it is contrary to the laws of Islam. So because of that, it almost becomes wajib for us all to have our wills. Now, if this is a very complex subject and it takes so many hours and so much time to talk about it. So today we're very, very, very basic and very, very simple. There are actually 7 parts. When you talk about making a will, there are 7 different aspects. First aspect is actually definition of what is a will. Number 2, why do we have a will? Number 3, the form of a will. Number 4, the status of a person who is writing the will. Number 5, those who are going to implement that, the executors. Number 6, how can a will become effective? There are certain things that have to be considered. And finally, the actual distribution of the assets, the wealth of the deceased. These are 6. Each one of them is a subject by itself. So we don't have much time to go into all that. It is very, very basic. And the irony is I will not start with the first, I'll start with the last, because that's the most important part of it. And that is the actual distribution. If we have time, then we talk about. We're talking about why we make a will. We already said it may not be wajib, but it almost becomes wajib when you know that ultimately the laws of Islam will be violated if you don't make a will. So will has to be made. Wasiyah. So, who makes the wasiyah? All of us. All of us make a wasiyah. And there can be two types of wasiyah. There can be verbal, and there can be one in writing. Verbal is effective, but it is also defective. Because what is written can be read and can be understood, but what is said sometimes cannot be implemented. So Islam does not necessarily say it has to be written, but again, it's highly recommended that it be in a written form. We have a sample that we shall give to you later on to look at how to fill the actual will. But the most vital part of it is the distribution. As a mu'min, as a human being, whatever you are, as far as you live, the wealth that you make is yours. And how you want to dispose it is in your hands. There is Shariah restrictions according to what is halal, what is haram. That is another issue, but you have full control over your wealth. As soon as death comes in, that control goes away. So all the assets that you have now, there are laws of Islam which will apply to that. Now these laws of Islam are not the same as the law of the state. The state laws of every state in America is different. We will not touch about that part. Only thing that we'll say is there is a possibility of incorporating, making sure that the will that is made on the basis of Islam does not contradict the laws of the state. And that can be done. And that is what you will get guidance, explanation of how that can be done. With only one caution. When you write it, do not say that my will is according to Islamic Sharia. Because of the situation right now, then you create problems for yourself. And then the lawyers will say this is my will, whatever it is. And make it the way you want to do it, provided it doesn't violate the rules of the state. So that is one thing which is very, very important. Now comes to the distribution. A person has died, what is left has to be formed what is called an estate. All the assets have to be put together. All the assets that you have, your money, your bonds, your properties, all assets go into what is called the estate of the deceased. There is one kafit again here, and that is there are certain assets which we all have, but it does not necessarily belong to us. For example, in here, most of the people who buy houses, we buy it in the name of joint, husband and wife. In the bank account also, we have the name of husband and wife. Therefore, when somebody dies, the estate, if you have a house, the full value of the house does not go in the estate, because half of it does not belong to you, it belongs to the wife. The same token, cash in bank and the stocks, if they are owned jointly, then the whole amount does not go into the estate. Only half of it will go in the estate. That is also very, very important when the Islamic will is made. So all the estate has to be formed. Once you have the estate, then there are certain part of that estate that must be disposed before distribution is made to the inheritors. For example, you have legal obligations, which are like homes, zakat. If you haven't paid your homes and your zakat, that the first claim will be on your estate. Estate must pay homes and zakat on behalf of that marhum. Number one. Number two, if he has got legal loans, credit card, all the loans, they have to be paid from this estate. However, there are certain obligations that will not be paid from the estate. Two of them. For example, the man has not fasted, or the woman has not fasted, and has not done his prayers, there is qaza, and he has not, that qaza, if he wants to be, somebody to be hired, for example, to pray on his behalf, or to fast because he could not fast, all that expense, that will not go in the estate. That will be, we talk about it, there is a way to dispose that, but that will not go in the estate. Estate is only homes, zakat, the loans, all will be paid out of your estate. Are we with us so far? Okay. So what is left now is referred to as net estate. Now that net estate is now to be distributed among the inheritors. Now, who are these inheritors? Before you do that, everything that is left now, the deceased, the person who has died, has claim only over 1/3 of what is left. That is 1/3 of the net estate. 1/3 only. That 1/3 he can write in the will of how he wants to spend that. And it is here that he can, for example, say that there are this obligation for fasting, for example, or whatever obligation, fasting or prayers, that he has to have somebody to do it for him because he could not do it. And there is that cost now will come from this 1/3. He can make it from 1/3. 1/3 he can therefore decide to do anything which he wants to do with that 1/3. Give it anywhere, and we'll come to that also again. So 1/3 is his. What is left now is 2/3. This is now to be distributed among his inheritors, who are now classified. There is a classification. There are those who come under class number 1, those who come under class number 2, and those who come under class number 3. And if those who deserve to inherit under class 1 are there, even if there is one of them, then class 2 and class 3, they don't get anything. That also will elaborate. Now, so we have the 2/3. The first claimant on the 2/3 is the spouse. The portion is different. We'll talk of the portion if there is time. It is the wife, if the man has died, the wife. And if the wife has died, the husband. They are the one who will get the first, there is a share of it. That share of it depending upon who are others in that group, that we shall talk. But the wife and the spouses come first. Whatever has been given to spouse, now what is left will depend upon if they are parents. If they are parents, mother and father, they also will have their share. And the children, no one else. These are the ones who come under that class. Now, when it comes to distribution, as we said, if the father and the mother are there, there is a different share, and you'll see that, and with due respect, I'm sure the ladies will ask me, and this is what Sharia is, and there is explanation for that. Male gets double than the female, in both cases. The father gets more than the mother. Okay, the father and the mother are taken care of. Now they are the children. The children is the boys, the male children will get twice that share of the daughter. Why is this? Again, if we have time, we'll explain. There's nothing to do with because this is woman and this is men. No, there's a reason for that also. So this is class number 1. Grandchildren, if their parent is dead, they will be able to claim. And again, that is some exceptions, and there are some rules for that also, which will become clearer if you be able to go through all this. But shortly, therefore, the first part is 2/3 of the share, net share, will go to, as we say, the spouses, the parents, and that. Now, if none of those on part 1, class 1 is available, it has happened such that none of them is available, then it comes the question of group number 2. Any questions so far?
Were children included in group 1?
Children will see, whose children?
Marhum's children.
Marhum children, again, see, it depends. For example, if the person is alive and his son dies, he has died, so the father was alive. Now the father has passed away, the inheritor. Their grandchildren, see, can get grandchildren? No. Why? Because the sons are still there. That is where he can provide him from that 1/3. That 1/3 is with him, see. Because the parents was, the parent of those children was dead, and the father of that person was still alive. See, so now that children, even if the grandfather, for example, wants to provide for them, you have to do it from his 1/3. The exception is if, it happened very recently, the sons were there, and his father died, but the distribution did not take place at that time. Distribution took place when one of the sons had already died, and he had his children. So because the father was still alive, you see, and the father would have inherited, so that share that his father would have inherited, that now goes to the children. Part of it only they will get. See, again, it will be depending upon that person who were his inheritors at the time when, these are the details that we have to go into. There are a lot of scenarios, but essentially the first group is those, if there is no one else in that first group, then the grandchildren will be the first before it goes to the second class. If none of them is there and the grandchildren are there, then they will go and get from the first category. The second category then will not apply. But in absence of that, then comes the second group. Now, the second group is the second group is now siblings, brothers, sisters. They are now the siblings. So they are now coming under the second group. Now, what happens if, again, there are details here. Again, a lot of details about a lot of things which are, again, so difficult to explain in a short time.
So then, I have a question.
And then the third, yes.
You said the details, there's many details, but not difficult to explain in a short time. So is that available to read while you're here so that if we have questions?
Exactly. And not only that, if you had started earlier, you could have done this. What we'll do is, I'm just very briefly going through it. Then I will give this to the organizers here. They can put this on the internet, and then you can go over it and look at it in details. What I'm doing is just very briefly introducing what it is. See, the different portions I've introduced, and the rest of it is all the different scenarios where there is, for example, at the first class, for example, there is a man, you see, and he has no parents. So the shares of the children will be larger if he has got parents, or if he has got one parent. You understand? So different scenarios. If he has got 3 children, or if you've got 4 children, then the shares will accordingly the portion, the exact amount will go down, but the proportion of the girls and daughters will be the same. The daughter, whatever is left, is getting half of what the son gets. However, as we shall come later on explain, there are ways of overcoming that. And how is that? Using that 1/3. That 1/3 in which the man has a full right over it, therefore he can use, and then Said explains exactly how you can play around, not play around, but use those figures and make it sure, in many cases, that girls and boys get the same amount.
Does that
Yes.
explain, sorry, does
Yes.
that explain maybe, like for women, for example, who are earning, right? Islamically, the spouses don't have rights over the women's.
You see, that is one reason, that whatever a woman earns is hers.
Right, so that.
That is one reason, see, there is that inequality. Plus, there's also another explanation, and that is when a woman gets married, her husband is responsible for her. When a man gets married, the entire family, he is responsible. So because of that weight, that a man is getting more responsibility, that's why he is getting a larger share. But still, there is that 1/3 that can be used in such a way that the women can get the same amount as I said, it should be explained very clearly. Said explains it very clearly how that can be done. So that is one thing. Now there is one more problem here that comes, and that we have mentioned before. When a woman cannot inherit land, when the husband is alive, he can give the full house to the wife if he wants to. But as soon as he dies, the house that is there, she can inherit from her husband only the portion of the building here, not the land. Understand? When a man dies and he is in his estate, there is a house. The share of the woman will be only, she can inherit only on the value of the structure. The value of the land, she cannot inherit.
When you say she, meaning the spouse or the daughter?
The
Or
spouse,
both?
the spouse.
Okay.
The spouse cannot inherit land of the building. She can inherit only portion of the structure. But there is again a way out of it. That is the Shara, you see. Why again that various expression? But you can still, for example, the house is a joint name, as I said at the beginning. So the house, the value of that house, only half of it goes in the estate. The other half belongs to the wife because it is hers right from the beginning. You understand that part? So that remaining part of the complication comes, how are you going to evaluate land, separate land from the structure? It becomes a complication. The solution is, there are 3 solutions. Solution number 1, why don't you give your share to your wife when you are alive? You can do that. Give your share to your wife when you are alive. But there is one problem there. And the problem, and I went one of the places to read Majlis, and I actually saw this man, poor chap. He was quite an old man like myself. And he went to marry a younger person. And because he was old, and he thought, I should provide for my wife. So she gave the whole share to the wife. And guess what? The wife died. Now, because that house belongs to the wife, now the parents of the wife and the children, they inherit. So the poor man was left. He has only that portion that is Sharia-wise from. See, so if that is one. The second case is it happens a woman may walk away from the husband. So there are solutions. The solution, therefore, is give the house to the wife with that condition. Condition number 1, that if you die, then this property comes back to me. can be done. Or, number two, that if you walk out on me also, this one comes to me. So there is solution number two. Solution number three is call your children. Tell them, look, according to Sharia, your mother cannot inherit the land. Why don't you all agree that we give this to your mother? Are you all willing to do that? Yes, we are all willing to do that. Then, see, the will can be made in such a way that she has. So there are these three solutions. So that is group number two. Then group number three, if group two group does not exist, sisters are not there, brothers are not there, grandchildren are not there, no one is there. So what happened? Now comes the uncles, paternal uncles and paternal aunts. And again, there is the share, and Sayyid has drawn a very good diagram, and said Mohammad Rizvi has done a very good job on this, and he explains all these various aspects and gives examples, and he has this diagram where it shows very briefly how this distribution takes place. And so my work here today really was just very, very briefly to introduce this subject of will right. Now this is only about distribution, when there are also very, very important conditions about the legality parts of this. As I said, there are 6 portions that, for example, the status of a person who is making a will. He has to be baligh. If he is a child, the child can be, you see, again, there are several issues here. If a child is making a will, there are issues that, again, it is explained here, you go through it. He must be sane, he must have, he must have freedom. It's not that somebody is forcing that person to write a will. This all has to be proved. And then it has to be properly witnessed. This is the reason why when you see the sample here, there are those, once you have done everything, you get it notarized, so that later on it is not said that this was done under force. We had a recent case in New York, a young man, very young, one young person, he suddenly was diagnosed with terminal cancer. He was sick, he was dying in the hospital. So we went to see him, and he relates. He says that I made one mistake. What is it? He says previously, because he was very sick and he had received donors. Donors had given their, he had received this donation of various organs. In that youth and that enthusiasm, he said, I also told them that when I die, my body I donate it. Now he says, now I realize that Islamically this cannot be done. So what do we do? See, so immediately you have to find out, did you make a will? Did you write somewhere? Was this? He had not. Fortunately, that was one thing. Second thing was, he told us that he was a Shia. And he said that his body was to be buried, have all the rights of a Shia, and to be buried in the graveyard of the Shias. He said it all. But he said it when his parents, his mother was there and his cousin was there. He told him to go out. When I went to read Adila for him, he made this wasiyah. So I had to call, make sure this was properly documented, to be written in the will. All the time he said that his parents knew that he was a Shia. But when he passed away, his mother came there. The mother came there, and mother asked me, when you called inside, what did he tell you? I said, he told me this. He says, yes, we suspected that he was a Shia, but we did not know. And now the father will definitely, he's anti-Shia, and he will come and make a big problem. So I will have to take this body back to Morocco. And we say, but he doesn't want it. This is his will. He said, but there'll be a big problem. I will allow you to do all the rituals, but body I have to take. Despite the fact that we have the will, but if this is the situation, then we quote. That's why I say there's also the executors. There are a lot of conditions with the executors. Those, see, when you write a will, that's okay. But then you have to make sure that that will is properly written, it's properly documented, and that it is properly preserved, and that they are those people who are executors who are going to execute it. Now, executor in this particular case, what could we do? That they have to take the body. This is one case. There's another case of a mu'min. He went to school together, a mu'min, a very good family. He died and he had a will in which he said that his whole body is to be donated. Now imagine giving up the whole body to be donated. So we had to ask for the ruling. What do we do? What does the executor do? Then, because normally an executor cannot back out. Once you have been mentioned as an executor of the will, you cannot back out. You have to do it. Now, what about doing something which is haram? In that case, the ruling that we got was that in that particular case, first of all, convince the executor or the inheritors that, look, this is all against Sharia, and don't do it. So finally, it was not done. Now, these are all the things that are mentioned in this. So that's why I say what I have said so far is very, 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 just something which is very simple. There are a lot of more things inside here, which if we had time, we would have done that. Because when we first initially did, it took so many days to do it. At a given night, we just have one aspect of it and go through it in details and discuss. But this is a shortage of time, so just to make people aware that there is this issue that you have, and then you have good center here, you can ask the ulamas, you can ask experts. They can come and talk to you, explain to you what to do, what not to do. As I said, I gave this to the organizers here. They put this on the internet, you can go through it. This is old. Sayyid Mohammad Rizvi, the one which I have is quite old. This was when we did together about 1993. He might have upgraded after that.
There's a new edition that came out last year.
Last year.
It's very, very well written. There's lots of editions, new charts and
Yes.
everything.
So see if you can have that. And there is one which, when this young man passed in, we had to get one which is backed by law. So we got one which was made, prepared in Houston, according to the state law. And that based on that, there is this specimen of how we are going to film. That I didn't bring, but if you want to, I can email. Then we can also put that on the. And the other one is this one, which is very simple, which was done by Astan al-Zahra in New York some time ago. So these are all of them, and there's a lot to mention and a lot of things to say. But as I say, we don't have much time, and there are a lot of other things that can be mentioned, inshallah.
Mohammad, sorry.
Yes.
Do you have time for a quick question?
Yes.
You mentioned if you haven't done all your salats and all the qaza that you want to pay from your will, see, we work here in the United States. Can we hire somebody of a family overseas in Pakistan, for example?
Yes, yes. You can
It
always
won't
do.
be like cheating because you're making a living here and
No, it doesn't matter. It does not specifically say somebody has to be here. You can always hire, or you can do it yourself if you want to do it yourself. But normally, it is wajib for the eldest, for the son, the firstborn son. If there are a family of 8 children and the son is the last one, there are 7 daughters before that. See, it's not on the daughter. There's a lot of concession given to the women because of their, you see, so the son has to do it. But if the parent himself has already provided it, because it is, see, like for example, in the estate, his kafan has to come from his estate. Sometimes we assume that if you die in a Muslim, so it is wajib for the Muslims to provide. But no, you have to provide for your basic things. You see, do it yourself. If you fail, then Muslims will do it for you, but then you are responsible for it. See? So that part, you see, the Raza, the qaza, the prayers that you want somebody to do it for you, that will not come in the estate. That you have to make it from your 1/3. Or if you want to provide for your family, like your daughters or your grandchildren, if their father is dead, but you cannot provide them put them under group number 1 because there's barriers, there are others there. You cannot do that. So what you can do is provide for them in that 1/3 that you have. 1/3 you can do anything with the children. Though again, there are recommendations, strong recommendations of how you should spend that 1/3. If you don't want to spend on the children, for example, you can feed the poor people, you can, so many things is mentioned here that you can do for that. Any correction, Doctor, you're very familiar with this.
Yeah, I'll just make one very brief comment since we have
Yes.
only about a couple of minutes. I had the new edition. I had the older one, but I also got the new edition. So what we did was we read this, both my wife and myself, and then we went and talked to our American non-Muslim attorney, and she was very good and very cooperative with us, and we gave her that book to read it herself and then come out with a legal document. So she prepared that document, and then we sent that document back to Maulana Rizvi to go over it and make sure everything is according to Islam. And absolutely that part that you said, that don't mention that this is Islamic will. We said this is my will, and my wife said this is my will, while we are, insane and all that kind of stuff. So, and then that will, there was no problem, and as long as the state law wasn't violated, as you said, there was no issue at all. I mean, just did it about maybe 8 or 10 months ago, and it was very easy, honestly. And I would highly recommend to get this book. In fact, I can possibly arrange it to get more of these and send them here so people can get them, if not on the internet. And I think it is also available on internet already.
I think so, yes.
They might be able to go on internet and find it themselves and copy it down, download it, copy it, and then bring it to your attorney. And attorney will, they appreciated this so much. I mean, that we were doing it according to our law, which was not violating anything of the state, in the state of Illinois. So there was no issue at all there at all. So I would highly recommend that this should be done by all people. And we used the 1/3 because I have one son, mashallah, and a daughter. So, and we wanted to be playing very, sort of equal for both of them. And although they didn't have any issue, but we did, we used, both of us, my wife and myself, we used 1/3 to compensate for our daughter. So she came out pretty equal actually, so based on that. So it works out well.
It's very useful,
This book is very good.
Very useful.
Very well written.
This is without precaution.
Not that we
Thank you,
think that any month is going to pass very, very soon, but we just prepare ourselves. Sometimes people are very much, they don't want to come because they say, we still have time to live, so why do we think about this? They're afraid of it. As we say, it's something which is...
Can I ask just one question?
Yes.
If somebody passes and they don't have a government, you're saying it should come out of their estate, but if somebody has given to them,
Okay.
should we take the money from them?
Yes, no. If there is a donation, like for example our center, I think most of the centers, there are people who donate it. So and then if you want to, you can also donate towards that fund, so that there's other covenant. But there are some people who insist that they should have their own covenant. So, especially the burial you should provide for, make sure.
So one more point I forgot I should say.
Yes.
If you do not have a will, then your entire estate goes to the probate.
Yes.
And the probate means that you probably end up losing most of it, or maybe 50% or more because the state then allows that, then state will assign your inheritors to take from that estate. The state is state of Arizona, or state of Illinois, or New York, or whatever. So that will become a big deal. And I think, so therefore it is important that you take care of it while you're living and your wishes are carried out. And and fortunately, our Shara tells us everything. It's very clear, very easy to follow. It's not really that complicated if you have it all in place.
And if you don't do it,
Then
you're in trouble, very big trouble.
Well, you are gone, but your family becomes. They all goes in the taxes for the state and all that. So you end up losing, or your children end up losing.
See, and if you just follow the state, because normally a husband dies, everything, one spouse dies, everything goes to that's the law of the. So again, if that happens, you will go to the grave, you suffer, because you are breaking the laws of Islam, the Sharia. So it has to be done in a very.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد